when you walk through that classroom door, you got to leave the ego at the door. You've got to
Yeah.
be willing to let people voice the solutions to all the problems. The culture of Mission Command is all about empowering people. In the learning environment, we've got to make failure acceptable as long as we can justify why we fail. Why are we willing to constrain so much? And again, it goes back to ego and risk aversion.
Welcome to Strategy Meets Reality podcast. I'm your host, Mike Jones, and today I'm joined by Don Vandergriff, veteran, educator, and one of the leading voices on Mission Command, adaptive leadership, and outcome-based learning. We explore why most organisations misunderstand Mission Command and how real leadership development happens through trust, intent, and thinking under pressure. Don captures it all in his powerful book, Adopting Mission Command. Welcome to Strategy Meets Reality podcast. Welcome, Don. I've been a admirer of your work. It's great to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. And again, you're a brother from another mother, so I enjoy this. I'm doing about podcast a month or every 3 weeks now. It's pretty cool. So what can I do to help you and your audience?
If you want to know about Mission Command, you look no further than Don. Your stuff, especially your Substack that you got at the moment, is really clawing at the idea of Mission Command, how it can be used, and that's what I want to explore today. You know, you've extensively explored Mission Command and its historical roots, but how do you see its principles influencing effective execution in today's complex operational environments?
Here's what the latest conflicts have taught us is that war always evolves, but the principles of war remain the same in that it's despite drones and AI and all their uses like in Ukraine. I agree with Wolf Owen in his latest book. It's really good. If you get a chance to interview him, I would do it because
Yeah.
the book is incredible. It's really, and what's funny about Wolf and I, he's like, wow, thanks for the review I've done over and over, is we have a contrast. He thinks all command is command, whereas I say mission command is a form of command, but it's more culture. So starting with that introduction, my point is what he's been talking about, we concur completely. There's nothing really new out there. It may expand the scope of the battlefield and the speed, but my point is it's even more demand for a mission command culture. And what I mean by that is what we tend to do with a hierarchical culture, industrial age culture like the US military, the US government, and the British, is when we introduce faster and faster decision making technology, we tend to control more.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's because of the award systems of the culture of both I can speak, our militaries are very similar. And again, I've said this over and over. I've worked with a lot of British officers and NCOs, soldiers, like I do here, and they've been incredible. It says nothing bad about them. It's the culture that has been evolved over the last, especially recently in the last couple of decades, with more and more infusion of control and the cultural Marxism influence runs totally counter to the doctrine. Not even the doctrine. Doctrine's a bad word. The culture of Aufstiegstaktik, the German word, which is badly translated in the English version.
Yeah.
So to get to your answer your question, people, I did a workshop a week ago for the Northern Virginia emergency system, which had first responders, police, firemen, and emergency management technicians, paramedics basically. And it was their mid level. At their level, they're like the platoon commanders for you guys and platoon leaders and company commanders for us. Experience at 15 to 20 years, 25 years, great people. So we did the whole morning of Mission Command outcomes-based learning workshop, and then in the afternoon we went to the nearby Battle of First Bull Run from the American Civil War to talk about those examples. And every one of these guys, and there was one lady who was outstanding. I got a couple emails afterwards. I couldn't leave at 1600. I started at 08. I couldn't leave but that's what we want to see, and I'm willing to stay around as long as until my wife calls me and says get home.
Yeah.
But they all love it. They all want it, but they say the same thing. When are you going to teach our superiors this stuff?
Yes, yes, yes. I
Because go
see.
ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I see that all the time when you go in and you're trying to teach. I'll do the same. I teach mission command in organisations, and again, the same thing. Well, it's all great teaching this, but what about the people that lead us? We can't do anything or apply these principles if they're trying to micromanage or control everything that we're doing.
Yep. And they do that again because of the flash of news where, oh man, you just got to get a guy killed or you killed a civilian. Why didn't you make sure that didn't happen in the law enforcement side or the
Yeah,
EMS side, the fire side? But as I did every fire captain for Washington D.C. 5 years ago, in two-day workshops. Great. A guy named Tony Carroll was then the training officer for the DC Fire Department. He's now retired, but he's doing volunteer work south of here. And we just talked the other day because half these guys and gals knew him from this workshop 2 weeks ago. And he tried to do the same thing. He tried to get it to the upper levels, and they're telling me the guys and gals in the middle that the more control they put on it, the worse it gets.
yeah,
Because they're having to wait for a certain level of management to arrive on scene if we're talking first responders, and it's too late then
yeah.
because they're so afraid of it. But the military's the same way. And here's the irony. The irony is, and I'm going to bring up more of these in my Substack articles, actual examples of what works great, has worked great historically and not so great. But what you tend to see when an organizational culture, and I say that broadly because it's the same impact regardless of the type of organization you have. You tend to evolve and be able to adapt to the evolving environment around you
Mm,
with better decisions. But the first thing that people have to realize, here's what the US military does. Okay, we're going to do mission command, and they'll plaster it over PowerPoint slides, and we're going to do John Boyd's OODA loop, and they plaster it over, and they'll bring in a senior leader or a senior non-commissioned officer to give the talk on it. And then this is really a big thing with all these leadership development organizations here. I don't know the scope of in Britain, but I'm sure it's similar. They'll bring in a retired 4-star or 3-star or high level SEAL operator. And nothing
yeah,
against
yeah,
Jocko, for example. Jocko's awesome. He does great stuff. I've even sent him a copy of one of my books. Hadn't heard anything yet, but I'm not criticizing individuals. But they'll bring in these people that just talk at you, and they don't know how to integrate. Mission Command, the culture of Mission Command is all about empowering people. And when you teach it, you have to teach it like it has to be run.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
you have to immersion learning, experiential learning, all those great academic terms. But that is hard for the senior leaders, regardless of an organization, to accept. There's two reasons for that. One reason is ego. So
mm,
when I was consulting Military Academy West Point for 4 years, which was incredible. The guy, Colonel Casey Haskins, one of the best trainers ever, and then one of his proteges, now Colonel Chad Foster, who is currently deputy commandant at West Point, where he's doing great stuff up there. But he's a lone voice in the woods. So when I taught with those guys, you had some of the best wise people at Military Academy teaching in the Department of Military Instruction. But I would say them when you walk through that classroom door, you got to leave the ego at the door. You've got to
yeah,
be willing to let people voice the solutions to all the problems. I can give you my answer and it would be the prescribed academic answer, but that's not why we're here. We're here for
yeah,
you
yeah,
to be able to make mistakes and make your opinion and then take critiques about it to build your character to get better. And I can't do that if I'm sitting up here with a 220 PowerPoint deck with charts on it and telling you how smart I am when that's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to make you better, and I can't do that with a lecture. But
yeah,
but in our hierarchical society, we have a very hierarchical society here with exceptions, and it's funny those exceptions are incredibly and successful, and the morale of the workforce or the military force is very high.
yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
it's like one of the when we changed the Scout Leaders course to the Army Reconnaissance course in 2009 through 10 with total backing of the 2-star general at Fort Knox. Now it's at Fort Benning. After we did all the first pilot courses, we surveyed the 32 instructors, and I hate the word 32 facilitators. As you saw in my last document, I made sure that was the key word, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But I said, what you guys and gals think? And they said, you know what? When I drive into work today, and this is from an E7, Sergeant First Class, when I drive into work today, I'm enjoying it because I'm part of something. You're entrusting me, empowering me to teach the way. Now, I give you the outcome and I hold you responsible, just like commander's intent. And I teach people how to write that correctly too, or speak it. But my point is, it's hard for these people to release themselves from the way they made it. Because I call our society the resume society, where you've got to have this certifications and these jobs, and as
Yeah,
long as you
yeah.
don't mess it up. And then when you get to that point, say you're in the police force, you're a major or colonel or cap, police chief, you're supposed to be the stellar person. So it's kind of hard to let your subordinates speak their mind, which based on their experiences and learning, they may be giving the right answer, but you disagree with it.
Yeah.
I'm not helping you out there.
Yeah, you brought some really good things in that overview there, where we talk about being able to adapt to the changing environments, people actually having freedom of action, which in turn, that's what people want, and we pay these people to do a job, but we constrain them so much that they can't actually do their job. So it's almost like, well, why have we got them? If I want someone there just to do exactly what I want them to do, I could get anyone to do that. But we train
Yeah,
these
you're
people up. They're experienced. We try to utilize them, but we constrain them so much that they can't adapt and they get no enjoyment out of it.
and you use a key word, constraint. And what I try to do in my work is answer the why do we constrain. It's like the
Mm.
end of the last Substack article when I was talking about how we failed reforming TRADOC from 2007 through 2012. And you'll see in the next article, we actually made some really big inroads, but it goes back to why are we willing to constrain so much? And again, it goes back to ego and risk aversion,
Yeah,
or the phrase from Vietnam War, zero defects, which is paramount
yeah,
in
yeah.
my society. It really is.
You see it a lot in safety critical, like you talk about the EMS and the fire service. We see it over here in engineering or safety critical situations. They think that they can control risk. So by controlling risk, they try and centralize it. And by centralizing it, they realize they then create risk further across the system because people are turning up to the situation and they're not looking at the situation and thinking, well, what am I here to achieve? And how can I achieve that aim as safely as possible? They're not thinking about that or the context. They're thinking about, okay, so what have I been told to do,
Yeah. And
regardless of the context?
what's going to happen if I don't do this right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the other reason that it's taking time now, I really think we've got the right people in the U.S. military starting to take charge. But it's like I told you when we were on before the podcast happened. They're like captains of a ship taking over a ship where the entire crew hates them. So
Mm,
a lot of my government at the federal level, somewhat at the state level, depending on the state, they're they're dominated by cultural Marxists. And what is Marxism? Marxism is two things. It's about egos, power, well, three things, power, but it leads to control because people think they can control everybody else. So this runs
yeah, yeah.
totally in conflict to a culture of office tactic, which is really related, and I'm sure you have a similar comment. The U.S. Constitution is really the doc. I have my handbook here because my wife's getting on to me about what are you going to write next as a book. And the Constitution is really about mission command.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
what it. So the key to mission command is I'm empowering you as long as you accomplish my outcome at 2 levels higher, and in return you can do it the way you want. But I'm going to hold you
Yes.
to that. Now, if you make a honest mistake, I hate honest mistake. If you make a mistake in trying to do right thing, but you can explain why you did it, then that's acceptable. But when you in the U.S. Constitution, it's about we're going to give you these rights, in return, go out and be a responsible person. You can do what you want as long as you don't trump on somebody else's rights. And also, regardless of your status in society, you're going to be held responsible. We've lost that,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we see it also in military. There's been guys who've written about a soldier can lose a weapon and gets tortured, or a soldier says something online and gets tortured. But a senior person, they make a similar mistake at their level and nothing happens, or they get a hand slap.
Yeah. I think you see that a lot where, there's that disparity between different standards at different levels, which then totally erodes trust, trust is a key principle of mission command. But with that, you
Thanks
brought
for
up,
bringing it up.
yeah, and you brought like a really key point around honest mistake, because I think there's something, you know, we can control our actions, but we can't necessarily understand how that's going to unfold in the external environment, the outcome. So we could do things, and after action reviews are great, but I keep seeing an organisation, they're not after action reviews. They're not thinking about their thinking and what information they had about them. They're focused on the outcome only, and you can't change the outcome. And so I'd laugh and call them after outcome reviews because that's all they seem to be.
Yeah, what's really good is I spend all interwoven when I'm teaching about how to, because really the success of implementing mission command involves building trust. How do you build trust? Well, the leaders at the top got to set the example. Okay, they've got to be ethically and morally squared away. And they've got to be able to, when they tell someone to do something, the people know they've already done it or they're doing it with us. Okay, that's very important. The other thing is you've got to develop people different than the way you do for a hierarchical or industrial age command, top down
Yeah,
command. You've got to do it totally different. And that's one of my early points I meant to finish because I go on all kind of tangents here. Is when you've been educated in the rote method of memorization, rote train for the test, as I call it here, and then you've been told you're successful because you follow the process, you don't get in trouble, you're a perfect bureaucrat, and that's both leaders and managers because they're distinctly different. Both are needed, but in the system we have, being a manager is more important than being a leader. The hard thing for them to do when I talk about how are you going to develop your people to do mission command, all they can fall back on is, well, what have I done since I was in kindergarten? And that's a whole other subject. How ironic that is, because the Prussian officers under Moltke called the new the learning method kindergarten tactics. Because what is
did they?
kindergarten? Yeah, when it was invented by the Swiss educator, his name escapes me, but it was in the 1700s kindergarten. It was about giving people something and just playing with it and figuring it out. So when Moltke took what Clausewitz had written and evolved it into the German learning system for officers and then NCOs later, it was all about, okay, we're going to give you this tactical problem, and we're not going to have a recipe to solve it. Now there'll be baseline tasks, how to fire an artillery piece, or how to do your individual tasks. That's unchangeable. But how you
Yeah,
solve the problem is up to you. And then we're going to have you have to justify it in your own words. Okay. And then, by the way, you're going to be critiqued at all levels because it didn't, regardless if you were a cadet at one of the seven uh, cadet schools throughout Germany in one of the core districts in Moltke's time, because that evolved, or at the Krebs Academy or the Captain's Tactics course. The methodology was principle driven in that, okay, you present your course of action, you're going to get critiqued. Okay, and the critique's got to be of substance, not, oh, it was a great one or it was a bad one, because I had to do that 2 weeks ago. There's no open ended answers. Why are statements? Why was it good in your own words? Why was
yeah,
it not
yeah,
so good? And then they have to justify what they did in their own words. And think about this, Mike. You then you have so you have superiors that have never been educated that way. They were the one that could most memorize a test, learn how to say the right thing, They would do the reading on the doctrine, but they never questioned the doctrine. And now you have a learning system that's totally opposite of that. And the
Yeah.
facilitator up there has to be what I call a Jedi Knight. It's all about asking the right questions to drive the learning. I tell my students if I do more than 20% of the talking during whatever length of workshop, then I'm wrong. And I ask them at the final AR, did I meet that? And they normally say, yeah. And
But
go
that,
ahead.
yeah, it's just a really crucial thing because when we talk about mission command or we talk about culture of mission command, people straight away, I think, go into it's just about process. It's just about we need these processes, we need these policies in. But really, when we talk about mission command, we're talking about people that are actually thinking. We're not teaching them what to do. We're teaching them how to, and engendering that all the time. Because as soon as we start taking control, as you see, we create learned helplessness. And then it comes to a point when you or me or anyone comes into an organisation and says, "Do you know what? You, if you want to be able to execute, you want to execute quickly. You need mission command." And you try and put it in, but people are um, so used to being told exactly what to do. When you're saying to them, right, this is the aim. This is what I want you to do. There are some minimum constraints that we need to put in place. How you do that, that's up to you. And they're looking and going, what do you mean? Well, I need more information. Well, no, you're in the context. I trust you. Go ahead and think about it. Afterwards. Like you said, I'll ask good questions like, how did that go? If you could do that differently, what would you looked at? How did you come to those decisions? That's what I want to know. I don't really care too much about the outcome at points. I want to know about their thinking.
No, exactly. You're so throughout my workshops, and I'll delve more of this in future articles, that after action review is so critical to the capping off the learning. And the main
Mm,
point in an outcomes based learning workshop, or I work for a great company called Emertes. We do the adaptive leader training, is and part of that is teaching how to do the right AER. Is you're exactly right. You're breaking down how they made the decision so they can get better. Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So one of my first exercises is an exercise where I teach them about the commander's intent and what you just said, constraints. I call them parameters,
yeah, yeah,
translated from the German word. But the main thing is normally what I always see, and I've been through this myself when I was consulting the Marine Corps a few years back, where the chain of command was like, "You're the mission command guy, go out and do it." I said, "Well, what's my constraints and what's my outcome you want?"
yeah,
Okay. And so the first exercise is very simple. They have to solve, but I'm teaching them what an outcome is, and then what you have to put your constraints to use your words, which is all it's all good because that's normally one or the other's not done.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So and then you've got to understand the difference between commander intent and mission statement, which is the statements is the direct task and the intent is what I just talked about. Okay, I'm going to give you this task to do, or several tasks, but here is what I want to see as a vision of success. I love the term as the smoke clears,
yeah.
but
I
here are
do. I
some
use that.
constraints. So in my simple numbers exercise, they can't talk. They've got to combine in after picking a number 1 to 9 into 17 with the 27 people. It's mathematically impossible to get all the groups into to equal 17. And I give them the time limit of 1 minute. You can't talk. So I said, what are the constraints or the parameters? And they list them. I said, well, when you give your intent to your subordinates, that's what you want to do. There's going to be constraints or limitations, whatever you want to use. So we do that. And then we do the first AER. And I tell them, I've written down two things I want to talk about in this AR, but I'll show them at the AER. Okay, because what do we normally see when we see AAR?
Briefing points about stuff that went wrong.
Yeah, and usually it's done by the superior person. They get up
Yeah,
there,
yeah, yeah,
what's wrong, and they do all the talking. And the best AARs I've ever seen is when the audience that's supposed to learn and get better tells you what they did wrong or tells you
yeah,
what they need to improve. That's what you want because when they admit it, it's going to happen. when I'm the sergeant major or colonel, because that's the people I generally see do this, and get up there and go, "You did this wrong," or "Here's the worst one on an AAR. Give me 3 good things you did and 3 bad things." That's the worst
Yeah,
type.
yeah.
Okay.
I think I've seen the evolution of AARs through my time in the military and so forth, and you see all those classic cliches. But I think you brought a really good point where actually just I think it comes early to your bit about facilitator. Now, I'm not there as a leader to stand up there and give just my perspective of what went wrong or what went well, because I could tell someone all they want, but if I keep telling them, I don't know if it's actually going to be taken in or they're going to learn. They're going to get nothing out of it. So just stopping and asking them and drawing it from them, because at least I can see what's implicitly held in here, because once we start asking questions, they bring it out explicitly, and I can start seeing the gaps from my perspective of the world and their perspective. None's better than the other. It's just, we just got differences that we see.
Nope, you're exactly right. But again, the majority, if not all AARs I've ever witnessed, are the big briefer saying what went wrong and what we've got to improve
Mm,
on, and don't let it happen again is the undertone. And in the learning environment, we've got to make failure acceptable as long as we can justify why we fail.
yeah. Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Again, with AARs, they're only done when something's gone wrong. People don't do it. Think, oh, do you know what? That went really well. Let's do an AAR to like learn from it. They don't. They just move on. Only when something goes wrong, and so people are in tune then to not learn. As you said, AARs are learning experience, um, but they're not learning because they're ready to put their helmet on and think, how can I get through this unscathed? So when they're asked questions like, oh, what's 3 things that went well? They're going to give you the minimum thing just so they can get out that experience, because they're
You know
trying to
why
think,
I'm
how can I get
laughing
through
at you?
this?
I'm laughing because I see this over and over, and I take it very serious because it's. But we have to have some humor and see things with sarcasm because all these things behind my desk are notebooks briefed. I take tons of information, I narrow it down, and then I put lessons learned, and you see it over and over. I like you said you're going to name the podcast Moltke or what? What were you talking about
Oh, it's
specifically?
it's strategy meets reality. So it's a play on von Moltke. So talking about how
He
no
is
plan survives contact with the enemy.
he is one of the greatest examples of realizing a culture was wrong and to change it to get the most power out of it. And he practiced it
Mm,
himself. He's an incredible person. I mean, in all kind of ways. And unfortunately, with our society now, I mean, all you hear about over here is everyone's a Nazi if they're not a far left person. And then when you
yeah.
say, "Oh, Moltke was a Prussian," and they go, "Weren't they linked to Germans and Nazis?" So he does not get the credit or the. I've got so much stuff on him thanks to Doc. Have you talked to Dr. Goodmanson yet? Bruce Goodmanson?
No, I haven't. I'll speak to him.
Please, I'll send you his email because one, he's a close friend. He has been incredible. He's the Moltke, modern day Moltke today.
Yeah.
He really
It's
is.
funny. Friends of mine always joke about, because I talk about von Moltke a lot and Clausewitz and that. It's just like, do you ever not talk about Prussian generals? But there's so much history in the sense of you got Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, von Moltke, Boyd. They were telling us all these things about how we deal with complexity, how we deal with unpredictability, how we need to be adaptable. But we sort of forgotten all that stuff.
No, we don't
We're just
forget it.
sort
I don't mean to interrupt you. We don't forget it. We intentionally avoid it because it's uncomfortable.
yeah, good, yes, yeah, good
I
point,
mean,
yeah.
I mean, I wish we would forget it. That would be at least a justifiable excuse. And I'm sorry for interrupting, but
No, no.
we, like I said earlier, most of our people have been educated the wrong way, and
Mm,
that's something I really got into. And all my I point back to all my books and stuff. Dr. Robert Bork, who is the leading learning guy in the world, in my opinion, he's the dean of UCLA School of Psychology, has a great webpage, the Learning Lab. But he gave a lecture one time at U.S. Army Trade Off in 2006. I was there, and it was incredible. It's like how we learn is exactly back. How we learn today or teach today is exactly the opposite of the way we should learn. And
mm,
all the things I've been talking about, I saw Moltke discovered himself. And in that, I got to make the most adaptive. Germany has no other advantage because they're surrounded by everyone. We can make
Yeah,
one
yeah,
big advantage. We can develop adaptive, creative leaders that decide faster than our opponents. That's how we can win. And he proved it
yes,
in 64, 66, and 1870. And but really studying how he adapted because he still had a lot of the old guard in it as senior officers in all three campaigns and the way he dealt with it was exactly the way he was promoting it to be taught. He did not all of a sudden micromanage. He accepted some things in each of the three campaigns, and it's fascinating that because most people, we have some experts here that write like Teams and Teams by McChrystal.
yeah, yeah,
But then when I hear about McChrystal as a person, or some of the other, like the senior SEAL guys, they're micromanagers. Okay,
yeah.
so they preach all this great stuff, but Moltke practiced what he preached. It was a and then if you look at the other thing about Moltke was we have the big jump now with AI and digital and satellite see all. Well, they made the similar jump when he was leading with the railroads and the telegraph. There are dramatic changes to communications and mass movement and everything. And Moltke fit a system that took advantage of both without crushing their culture of office tact. That's why I love studying the guy. And Bruce, so I spent partly thanks to Bruce, Bill Lynn, and then my wife, who speaks some German, self-taught German over the last 30 something years. I'm still poor at it, but when Bruce gives me something like he passed on Rommel's other book, we all know about infantry attacks, but Rommel also published a book of tactical decision games from his experiences. But it's all in German. There's not a
Wow,
translation of it.
wow,
I think I restacked it. Yeah, I did restack it. So,
cool. Oh, yeah, I think I saw that, and there was, yeah, I saw that, and there was YouTube videos that talked about
well, those
different options.
multiple problems, yeah, those
Yes,
are
yeah, yeah, yeah.
available. But the thing that Bruce sent out, I restacked was Rommel's other book, which was a book of
Okay.
decision games from his own experiences. So, what you want to do with decision games? So this, when we teach, we try to spend an equal amount of time with the students, regardless of their organization, developing their own centric games to what they do every day. So, if I did a 2-day workshop, which is the favorite one of everybody, they spend the afternoon in their homework in their teams developing. Say, say they're here's a good example for you. We did the garrison of Fort Hood thanks to Colonel Foster in 2021, and it was a 2-day workshop. And it was 31 senior executives, most of them retired colonels and sergeant majors. Big egos, and rightly
Right, yeah.
deserved, don't have a problem with it. They worked their ass off to get where they're at. But what we did, the second day, there's 6 groups, and it was all day. They get a full hour to present their game. They have to do a game centric to what they do every day, but using the methodology they learned in day one. So what was cool is about 2 months. This was in October. So in December they had this horrible ice storm at Fort Hood. Well, one of the games that the group made was how to deal with an ice storm. It was a
Mm,
TDG, a decision game, and the guy wrote me an email later after this happened in December and said we used that same because when I got back to my office and we used a decision game with my subordinates to teach them, and we went through this event. So going back to Moltke, he was pushing for that. The very first thing that Moltke did as chief of staff, not the very first thing, I don't know exactly what he did as official, but one of the first things he did was he saw the yearly big war game exercise, free play exercise. And you know how long the op order was for it?
no, how long?
798 pages.
Wow.
So it was totally controlled, scripted. And he came in and said, "We're getting away from that. We're gonna I want to start seeing more like back because he had the advantage. And another thing about him, he never commanded anything above the level of company. Now he was an advisor to the Turkish sultans, a German
Yeah,
advisor,
yeah.
and other things. But he was primarily always in positions to think and reflect. Important word, reflect, learn from what he saw. And so I know Dr. Hughes has written a good deal on him, and so does Bruce. But the point is, there's a guy that lived what he wanted everyone else to be able to do, and that you have to have that.
Yeah.
And we have very few of that these days.
Yeah, and I think again it comes to that, like you said, that ego, that risk aversion, and I think along with our learning the way we've learned, I'm pretty thankful that I didn't do very well at school, so I didn't really learn anything from it. But maybe it's helped me with this way of thinking. But the other part is we still got the belief that the world is stable, the world is predictable, and if I do this, regardless of anything else, this will happen. And Moltke realised that didn't happen, and that's why, that way of thinking around, well, we can't control everything. We don't need to control everything. We just need to give clear intent and enable people that are closest to the problem freedom of action to adjust in line with the intent. And we look at that and think, well, when I tell people about this, they're like, well, yeah, it sounds great. That's what we need to do. And I'm a firm believer in that mission command is the leading principle or philosophy to be able to execute effectively, bearing in mind that strategy execution statistics are pretty poor. I think around 90 to 98% of strategies never implemented. Large point of that is to do with execution. Something then doesn't correlate from understanding to action. Trying to get leaders to do it, to apply it, even like you said, have games and just in a safe area to try and just practice it. They just get caught up in the day to day, and they never
And then the
change
most
their behavior.
neglected part is what we've been largely talking about over the last 40 minutes is they don't take the time to develop their subordinates, which should be an ongoing thing. But it doesn't
Mm.
have, they want to do a formal, you and I have dealt with a lot, but they want to do a formal 2-day, 3-day conference somewhere and, at a nice place. And there's value in that, getting to know people and sharing ideals and having a break, go somewhere different. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but everyone thinks that's like I was telling the group 2 weeks ago, there was this police staff sergeant in Baltimore police when I consulted him. And someone in the Baltimore paper wrote an article about this guy, took the stuff from our workshops. And every week he gets a 4-hour day with his squad, okay, which are part of a shift in the police language. And he started doing this stuff and was talking about it. But one of the things these guys did was they did a TDG on pulling over a person that had diplomatic immunity. What would happen? They did a TDG on that. He calls me and says, "You made me look good." I says, "You made yourself look good." I said, "What happened, sir?" And he said, "One of my officers pulled over an ambassador or some high level diplomat here in Baltimore, and they were totally drunk, and he knew how to handle it." When they did the TDG, they were all telling me we never talk about this because we think it's
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
That's what his point was. So they spent. And I was doing their workshop when they did this TDG, the one they were supposed to make centric, and they were going on for 40 minutes talking about it. Guess what? I'm letting them go. Why? Because they developed a real world problem to solve, but they never talked about it, which happens
yeah.
there, like you said, about strategy never gets executed. And then they actually, a week later, this one policeman and part of that group did it, and he handled it perfectly. Well, it was close to perfect in the real
Yeah,
world.
yeah,
He handled it well. And when he was interviewed, he said why. And that's why the chief, Burchard, called me because he was like, it was great. So it goes back. People think when you do learning, it's got to be formal and it's got to be gated off. And I said, okay, guys, how long did it take us to do this TDG this last 2 weeks ago? And they said, oh, it took about 45 minutes with the AAR. Okay, how
yeah,
hard
yeah,
would that be? So what was cool was an EMS captain who has about 30 people, and then a SWAT guy down near county south of here. He's a former Marine sniper, but he's the SWAT chief as a captain. He says, you know what? I can take this during a week and we can integrate this 1 or 2 times. I said, there's your development right there. Because I told him the example my cadets would end up at Georgetown and at West Point. they'd end up doing 50 of these things in a school year. 50. Think about the learning
Wow.
curve there.
Yeah, and it's challenging for those situations. You can't predict every situation, but you're as Boyd talks about, you're getting the orientation close to reality as possible, and that's what we want. That helps them. But to your point around the time that we have, I see people going, "Oh, Mike, I want a team day," and I'm like, I'm not your person. I'm not here to throw tennis balls or make bloody marshmallow towers, all that useless
No,
stuff.
they
Or
do that. It's funny.
yeah, or they just get a team away and all they do is go through their risk register. You're like, well, you're not getting any value of this. Like even in the basic, like you could do a thing where you get people to um share their perspective around the context we're in. What's the situation? How's it affecting us? What risks are we seeing? What are the internal, external factors that are the biggest issues for us right now? And at least having that discussion and seeing those perspectives, that's more useful than um,
Oh no, that we're making, which is good. We're both believe in this. We both see it from similar directions or perspectives that are similar, supporting efforts. But that, like I said, I see the same thing all the time. I mean, you get again, oh, General so and so is going to be our keynote speaker, or Doctor so and so, 30 books is going to be our keynote, and there is some value to lecture, okay, but it's not what they make it out to be. I go in, if I do get invited to a conference like I did in September, and I start off with a game, a problem solving game. And guess what? The results are, they're like, I wish everyone wanted to do that. Because one, I involved everybody.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then they realized that my ego wasn't in the way. Because I try to tell people, don't, if they want to read about me, that's fine, but it's not about that. It's about them. Okay. And so I try to do like Moltke. I practice. Bruce is like that too. He's got a PhD from Oxford. That never comes
nice.
up. And he did it to make himself better. And got a master's from Glasgow University as an American. And he went to Yale University. So the guy has incredible academic credentials and he speaks fluent German and French. And his books have won awards. But it's not about, he wants to be the best teacher he can be, or facilitator, to make people better. And
Yeah, yeah.
here's the funny thing about how bureaucratic our system is. So he started the School of Advanced Warfare for the Marine Corps. You know what that is? SAW.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
The second year of Command and Staff College. It's supposed to be when Bruce created it was the Kriegsacademy, American version. Okay.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Bruce created that as a captain. Okay, because
Wow.
he was in the Marine Corps. He retired as a major like I did. Okay, because he refused to play the game. Well, Bruce, 4 years ago, we have lunch all the time. 4 years ago, when I was consulting them, we would go for long walks. He applied. He applied to go back there and be one of the professors, and they turned him down. And the reason
Very
is
cool.
is because he doesn't conform to their process and what they do. He refuses. He does it the way he knows is right because that's why he's built that mountain of knowledge. And when it's
Mm,
not, he's not going to accept it. So here's the guy that was the founder of this course, and then him and I both applied at the new Marine Corps Wargaming Center, and we both got turned down. And we know why. They are hiring people to come in that are technology people and also people that'll tell them what they want to hear. So what war games should do is create more questions than the answers. That sounds
yes.
odd, but it should. Madurian talked about after the France fell in 1940, he was interviewed for Spickstone in one of the papers, and he said, "Oh, the miracle on the Meuse." That's what the reporter said. He said, "No, it wasn't. We had done 21 war games from the fall of Poland until May 8th, or a few days before the LD line of departure." And he said, we continually asked questions from the results that we had to go out and solve and prepare us for that. There's your miracle right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is the thing with you're right with technology and AI and all this stuff. It's what I'm seeing increasingly is people wanting them to give them the answer, which what we're seeing we were talking about earlier about leading these people. People are so used to just being told the answer, and
Yeah.
now we want machines to tell us the answer,
Yep.
but not realizing that it's this question, it's learning, it's challenge, it's getting people to not what to think, how to think. That's going to help them navigate the changing environment that they're going to be faced with. Otherwise,
Everyone,
as soon as the context changes,
yeah,
they're not going to know what to do.
you're exactly right. It happens all the time. But every time I do a problem, the most obvious question is, could we have more time? They want more
Mm,
time because they want, and I like, if I gave you more time, what would happen? Because I teach them how using time in these problems actually creates a rapid discussion, so a rapid answer so they can discuss it. Okay. And I'll tell them, even if I gave you 20 minutes on the 1 minute problem, would you even do it better? Probably not.
yeah, no,
So it's a constraint, but it goes back to what you and I are talking about. They're not being, the brain is like any other muscle. It's got to be challenged. When we work out hard, we want to challenge our muscles to rebuild them and build them stronger. And the brain's the same way. But when you make it easy by giving them all the answers, like our public school system under G.W. Bush wanted to make everything level, and so they trained to the test, the state required state test. That's why our scores in reading and writing and arithmetic are so low, because people
yeah,
are not challenged how to think.
no. That timing is a key thing because it's one thing we don't really have control of because we need to make a decision because these things are happening. And I had an incident recently with someone we were making choices around strategy, and we came to this decision really quickly. And I said, yeah, but if we spent another 2 hours on this, would you actually come out with anything different? And it probably won't. And
Exactly. But what's cool is when you give them a question time, even the students start realizing students could be anybody. They go, wow, we had to make a decision and it created a lot of discussion about it. I said, that's exactly, it's called peer to peer learning.
yeah,
You,
yeah,
I mean, that's another thing we overlook is I get these audiences that have incredible wealth of experience. And if they get the standard course, Boyd's stuff is the really funny one where I've seen about 31 different Boyd use courses outside Chet, and they all do the same thing. They lecture the little chart, the wire chart.
yeah, yeah,
I've actually, thanks to Moltke and Bruce and Bill Lynn and other people, I've learned how releasing that ego and letting people learn and discuss and get better.
yeah.
That's what we got to do, and it's very rarely done.
And a lot of that as well is with you want leaders to make a decision so they can tell you timely decision making so that enables the next level down to understand what they need to do. But something that Clausewitz brought up as a friction, he called it limited knowledge, which is still sort of true, but I think it's slightly different nowadays because, especially after COVID, it's almost like Microsoft's just thrown up in people's offices. Now we've got Power BI boards for everything, and and now we've got AI, all this other stuff, and it's all it is just amplifying information at leaders. So much information that they are information rich, insight poor.
Yeah,
So they can't
that's a
actually
great one.
discern. Yeah, they can't
That's a
discern
good
what they
one.
want.
Yeah. So in all my problems, and again, I learned this from those guys I just mentioned, and I just made them better. Is when I give these scenarios out and the information, I always leave out key information because another thing I teach people to do is how to ask questions. They're afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, yeah,
And they
yeah,
tell me why, because their leaders take it as an insult to ask questions. I said, I want my people to ask questions because we're thinking as a team. I might miss something. So I deliberately do that and they learn how to ask our good and bad questions. So I teach that too. But I got that from what Moltke was encouraging at the cadet level. And that's where, so the way we do it adverse to the way we should learn is we start with all the required process task focus at the cadet level when we should in fact teach them how to critically think because they're
yeah,
already corrupted by our learning institutions, our public schools. So we've got to first teach them how to think, and then we can teach them how to do key tasks at their unit or at their place of employment. But we do it the opposite. We focus on the process, like the baseline. I can tell you some great
mm,
stories, Mike, about going to Sergeant Major's Academy, and I've never used PowerPoint. I have charts and whiteboard, and I ask all these sergeant majors. So give me the three most important baseline tasks. What's the baseline? And first, it's a joke there, and the irony is like, so they do three, not one. And it's like physical
yeah, yeah,
fitness, drill, and ceremony. I says, really? And then I come up with some historical example that's critical thinking, how to think. But they
yeah,
think the baseline has to be the learning the mass discipline versus the self discipline. That's very
yeah, yeah. And that's what we want in this, and you're only really going to get through this when you get people to start to think, and that asking questions, and you're not asking stupid questions. They're fighting for information, and it's and trying to. One thing I've always found interesting is when you give someone an intent and you get them to analyze that intent, go, well, what are they trying to achieve? What are they meaning by this? And it's trying to get people to understand what's implied and what's explicit. They're not said it. Well, it's thinking about, well, they want me to do this, so for me to do this, even though they've not been explicit in this, I must achieve these things, and they won't do it because it's almost like, well, unless it's paint by numbers, I can't do anything.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. And what's sad is I've got it all laid out in my book. I've got it all laid out here in my book, Adopted. Everything we just talked about is laid
Yes.
out in there. Okay. And here's what's cool.
I got my copy here, brother.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's not signed though. I'm just going to say that.
I've got to do it because we will meet someday.
Yeah,
The
definitely.
Taiwanese did it, a better version, just recently for their leaders. So, and
Wow.
the Ukrainians are using it too. I gave them permission because I'm always giving back.
Yeah. There's something when we spoke about when we last spoke a few months back. There's a really good point. It's giving people the confidence to understand when to do something different to what they've been told.
That's what I love. Another reason about the best problem solving games are, as Moltke said, no plan survives first contact.
Mm.
Beyond, and planning's still good. It's still necessary. Okay, because you set up framework and unifying effort by the team. But what Moltke wanted to do, and he created a bunch of decision games, was the person at the front, what you were told and what the enemy's doing is not what you plan to do. So what are you going to do? And I do those type of problem solving games, and man, people got it's like a breath of fresh air to they're actually getting, even though it's simulation, they're actually getting to do this because they all tell me, well, if it wasn't as planned or what we were told by our boss to do, then we're going to wait for more guidance or we'll call up. I mean, everywhere. It's sad. It really is.
Yeah.
But what I've discovered is you can development systems, the outcomes based learning methodology that allows people not only to do this formally but do it informally.
Yeah.
Even among a team of two people.
Yeah. But that's where I go into organisations and they're like, Mike, we just want people to have initiative. We want people to have initiative. And I'm like, how are they going to have initiative when you're not clear on what you want? The aim's not clear. You've constrained them so much that they've got no freedom of action, and you don't even share what I like to call the in order to. Like, we're trying to do this in order to achieve this. Without those fundamentals, they can't have the initiative because they haven't got the information and no way of using that information to take the initiative. And often you see organisations spend loads of money on initiatives to gather engagement and to build the spirit of the organisation. Well, I keep saying, and I'm firm on this, that if you can apply mission command philosophy into your organisation, you will see engagement. Like you were saying about that EMS that they enjoy going to work because they're going to have agency. They're actually going to be challenged and stretched and get some enjoyment from that. They're going to have trust in the leader in the organisation, which is often missing, and they are going to get variety because they got the variety by the fact that they've got the freedom to adapt to what they need to do. I don't know if you see that.
I see everything we've talked about is similar to what we both see similar things. It's amazing. They favor the tangibles over the intangibles.
Yeah.
The tangibles are, like you said, the little fun games without really tying that to learning. Like the opening game I do, I ask, and hey, why do we do this? And there's always, oh, it's an icebreaker. I said, there's no such thing as an icebreaker in OBS.
Yeah.
Then I go, what's the purpose of this exercise? And they start answering their own questions. But what I really did is I use 15 minutes to show them how to understand intent. And that's the other purpose, that they could turn anything into a problem-solving game.
Yeah. And even when you see leaders and they go, well, what are you trying to achieve? And they go, well, I need to achieve this, I need to achieve this. And they're just a list of tasks. And when you actually say to them, but forget the task. What's the outcome you're trying to, by achieving these tasks, to your phrase earlier, which I love and I use also, is when the smoke clears, you've done all those tasks. What are you wanting to see meaningfully different? What's the outcome that you're trying to produce? And that gets them a different frame of mind on how they actually communicate and what outcome they want, which then enables people to understand that, we could do these tasks in various different ways as long as it achieves the outcome.
I saw a statement the other day from one of the training sessions. When everyone's trained as a leader, your organization is untouchable. And then I went to how they train the leader, and they get a big lecture. So I
Course.
mean, you've got to create what we call a fail-safe environment where you can fail and learn from it. And I was trying to teach the Marines that a few years ago when I consulted Training Education Command. That was hard for them to accept. You don't want failure in combat, but you're going to get failure in combat too. How did you overcome it when you did realize you failed? How did you learn from it? But if you don't do it in your learning environment, in your so-called peacetime garrison, you're not going to do it when you go to combat.
No, it's counterintuitive because I guarantee if you try to control everything, you are going to get more failure. It's just like, from system thinking and complexity theory, that the more that you try to control risk, the more risk that you create across the system. But I think it's just trying to get people to realize that and to release control, which I think we're both advocates of. And thank you so much for coming. But if you could leave leaders one thing to think about from this podcast, what would it be?
That development of your subordinates doesn't have to be formal. You can create any opportunity to develop and make them better as long as you use the methodology I talked about. Okay. I create the problem. What's the outcome you want to achieve? Learning outcome. And then, hey, I can do this in an hour. I see people sitting around right here, and let's do this. Or you delegate that to one of your subordinates. I want you to create, we call it here hip pocket training, but create a TDG that you think we need to work on a problem with a TDG, and then have it ready to go when I call on you. That's even the better way to do it.
Yeah.
Learning does not have to be formal. Okay.
No.
Are scripted, i.e., I've allotted 4 hours doing that. No, it's what I call opportunity development. Okay, have that ready. That's what I want to leave with people, because if they do that, then they're going to start, man, because this is ongoing. It never stops. The development of your people, with the Prussian system, they started with fairly simple problems and they continually got more complex.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
that's how organizations have to be, and if they do that, they'll get better. They really will.
Yeah, definitely. To start creating the thinking person, they're only going to reap the benefits. And I think that pushing that to not centralizing that and pushing it out and getting people involved, I think is only going to be a winner. Don, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you and to speak about von Moltke and Fits and all the good stuff.
And I wish you
thank you so much.
Continued luck, because you, like I do, we had the best of two worlds. We can help make a living at this, but we can also make people better, and you can't ask for a better situation.
No, we're privileged in that way, and I think it's great. So thank you so much for coming. It's been awesome.
Okay.
Take care.